Again, thank you everyone for joining this conversation today, and especially our panelists for making the time for us. The discussion around Black, Indigenous, and people of color representation and content is definitely a complex one. Representation in US content has steadily increased since about the 50s. That's documented, but much of that we find out now was due to the increase in Black-oriented publications. As well, the representation was mostly sports or music related, or portraying Black actors in a stereotypical manner, such as maids, fast food workers, kitchen help, etc., serving white guests. Even Dove, that has gotten so many things right, got representation very wrong in their 2017 campaign, showing a Black woman transforming into a white woman. We've got Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, Mrs. Butterworth, and other stereotypical brands have also gotten it wrong and are being called out once again for that. Yet some brands have embraced diversity well. For example, Old Spice's The Man Your Man Could Smell Like, and IKEA's Hooray. And IKEA has done a lot for diversity, including showcasing physically disabled people. It's a start, but I think we can all agree we're not there yet. So we started this conversation under the IDEA series, specifically about diversity in production back in October of 2019 at the IDEA Lounge. We said then that we didn't have the magic bullet that would instantly change things, but our panelists still were able to offer some guidance for agencies and production houses. But I think we can agree that we need to get this conversation going again. This time with the needed understanding of the systemic racism that exists, not just in the US, but also in Canada. And be purposeful about the actions and changes we can and will make. So I want to introduce our panelists that are joining us today, starting with Director X, and he can say hi, X.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
There we go. We're on speaker view, so every time the panelists will speak, it'll switch to speaker view for you.
I got the grid. I see everybody.
Oh, awesome. You got the grid. Okay, fabulous. So X is one of the most iconic music video directors of our time, and you know, Hotline Bling from Drake, Rihanna, one of my favorites, Thong Song from Cisco, and Fancy from Iggy Azalea. Sorry, X, those are my favorites, so I had to give them a shout out, as well as Kendrick Lamar, among many others. It's too long of a list. Go Google it. He's been nominated and received many, many accolades for his work. Also, as a filmmaker, debuted his first Sony studio feature film, Superfly, and has also done work creating art installations for doing Nuit Blanche. But one of my favorite things, X, and really glad that your bio was updated to include this, that you use your platform for social change in the founding of Operation Prefrontal Cortex, an initiative created to reduce Toronto's gun violence through mindfulness and meditation. So folks, if you have not seen X's TEDx talk, please go to YouTube and look that up. It's really very powerful. Thank you for that. So welcome X to the discussion today. We also have Taj Critchlow, who was born in Toronto. I should shout out as well that X is from Brampton, so he is a local guy. Yes, representing, absolutely. So Taj as well was born in Toronto, a multifaceted entrepreneur. He is a talent manager, film and television producer, and creative consultant. He represents some of today's most culturally relevant filmmakers, of course. X is one of his clients. And he's also the co-founder and executive producer of Popp, a new age production company creating globally celebrated content. Taj was also the executive producer on Superfly. Welcome, Taj.
Hello, everybody.
Joining us today with the agency perspective in our discussion is Ira Baptiste. Ira is currently the managing director and EVP at Brandfire Marketing Group. She has a stunning 34 years of experience as a successful marketing and advertising executive, a wealth of knowledge and experience under her belt. And my favorite thing to say about Ira is it's who I want to be when I grow up, because she's so fabulous. And as her career unfolded, and one of the main reasons why I wanted her in this discussion today, is she's had many positive experiences as the only person of color at the table, but she's also experienced what we're talking about openly now, those racial bias comments, interactions, and assumptions. And the fact of the matter is that this subject was something that wasn't even talked about throughout her career when it really should have been. There was not an acknowledgement or understanding of what was actually happening. And she has a lot of stories about that. And so connecting with her and ask her about those someday. Over time, the conversations have started to happen, and she's been in the fortunate position to be able to give voice and action to Black representation of talent in advertising. And again, she loves tennis, which is one thing I love about her. And she is reaching for that Serena Williams that is inside her. And I love that. She's pretty fabulous. So welcome, Ira.
It's really far, 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 far away.
It's
but
not that
dream.
It's not that far. She's amazing. She's amazing. So my partner in crime today is Haem Roy, who is the Director of Marketing at Rouge Media and the President of the BCMA, the Branded Content Marketing Association. And Haem has worked across markets from India to Canada and the US. Welcome, Haem. And then there's me. If you don't know me, I've been in the marketing communications agency sector for a little while, 20-ish years. I hate to say that. I think I want to bring it back down to a manageable number, so you don't know how old I am. But now I work with the ICA member agencies to amplify, protect, and transform their businesses and the work they do in Canada and around the world. So I promised you a couple of stats, and if you follow me on LinkedIn at all, you would have seen while I was promoting this event that I promised we would talk about the 1%. And it's not the 1% that you're used to hearing about, so wanted to share this with you. So CPAT, which is the Commercial Production Association of Toronto, says that 90% of Toronto, or maybe that's Ontario, production houses are its members. Collectively, these members represent 517 directors. Of those, only 6, or 1.16%, are male Black directors. Of those, only 3 are Canadian. Equally as startling, but even more disturbing given the great work that Free the Bid has been doing to advocate for female and females of color within the production industry, there are no, count them, 0 female Black directors, and only 11.8% total female representation on the collective director rosters. For some context, so that you understand what that stat means, the Toronto stats from 2016 StatCan census said that 7.54% of the population identify as Black. So there's a little bit of work to do there on the content side. So let's get our discussion started today. And I think we can't start talking about representation and storytelling in content without really talking about this idea of mirroring. And Canadians pride themselves on their multiculturalism, we know, but we also know that just because we're Canadian doesn't mean there isn't systemic racism. So I'm gonna throw this out to X and to Taj first, and we'll get your point of view on this. But as I say, we pride ourselves on the multiculturalism. Is it represented in content? Do we have diversity, or is it a misconception?
We have diversity in the city. We have diversity in the streets. We have diversity amongst the people. Do we have diversity behind the camera in the offices? No, not at all. Creatively, like the joke in our office, whenever we're going to an advertising award show, is that we all say it now. Oh, we're going to the Whiteys tonight. Oh, it's the Whiteys? Yeah, it's the Whiteys. It's the first time I went, Taj says, oh, we're going to this award show, come with me. And I look around the room. I go, this is impossible for this room to be this white in this city. And it's an issue. And I was saying it the whole night to everybody. Taj and I were the only Black people in the room. It was performance art and white people's comfortability with people of color. There was a good group of Asian, then a little less South Asian, and then Taj and I for Black people. In a city where the creative talent pool of people of color has changed the sound of music on the entire planet Earth. Everywhere you go, people sound like Drake and The Weeknd and Tory Lanez and all this stuff. Even the other rappers, the other street rappers sound like Toronto kids. So the talent pool of this city is capable of changing the world creatively, but no one in the advertising industry can find any kids to come up with a Snickers commercial. That's impossible. Along with our directors and our DPs and all these things, it's unbelievable. But what happens in Canada is that we get to hide behind America's racism and say, well, they're the bad ones and we're the good ones. I would never be in this position if I stayed here. I tell people I had to move to America to get into the Canadian film industry. I never, ever, ever would be in the position I'm in if I stayed in Canada, right? Because since we're not racist, then we tell ourselves, well, you know, I'm not racist, just that kid just isn't right. Oh, that kid just doesn't, no, they're just not right for this. So suddenly their mistakes become bigger if they even get in the door, or they're just not right for the environment. It's impossible for those rooms to be that white. It's a shame. We should all, it's a disgusting shame, and truly shows what's going on in this country. I still can't believe it, that I can go to an award show I've never been before and know comfortably Taj and I are gonna be the only black people in the room. 100%. Maybe one other. It's disgusting.
Right. And to add to X's point, it's been like this for a long time. When we got into the game 20 years ago, to X's point, we had to go to New York City, and X interned for Hype Williams at the time, who was the godfather of music videos. So our mentorship, our first cutting teeth into this game came from the US. We didn't have no mentors. We didn't have no places that spoke to us, places that looked like us, places that we could relate to. And it's the reason why we started our own production company, Pop Rock, because a lot of times, especially talent in general, which is a whole other conversation, but right now we're speaking about Black representation and people of color. We tend to feel bitter, and we get our success in the US, and a lot of times we don't look back. But we felt the need that we need to change that. So we started a production company. Initially, it was called Creative Soul, where we wanted to create a platform for people of color and represent the unheard and underrepresented. And that's the place where we met Karina Evans. She was our intern. Now, if you don't know who Karina Evans is, she's right now the hottest, youngest Black female director coming out of our city right now. That's kicking ass all over America right now. And she came to us as an intern that was referred to us by Boy Wonder. And at the time we developed her, you know, she's shooting BTS on some of our production shoots, on our commercial shoots and stuff. And fast forward to our new production company, Pop Rock, which is now going on 3 years, where we got a shot with Drake. X was shooting Superfly at the time. Drake came to us like, hey man, I got this concept for a video called God's Plan. I want X. And we're like, hey man, X isn't available. However, we got this new director who's incredible. Her name is Karina Evans. At the time, she only had like a $15,000 music video, but looking at her work and her strength in understanding story, we knew she was the right person to tell this story in a compelling way. And she was given that opportunity. And after that, she never looked back. Now she's rep by William Morris, WME, which is the biggest ad agency, the biggest agent in Hollywood, as far as an agency is concerned. She this year has cleaned up in all the advertising awards. She won for New Director of the Year. She got a bronze. Other products that other campaigns that she shot, one at the Webbies, one at the AICP Awards. And again, she's from Toronto. And again, we have to get validated by Americans for us to get any kind of consideration out here. And that's kind of crazy. And I understand the stigma that comes with our brand coming from the world of music video, where in advertising, they don't look at advertising as an art form. They don't respect the art form, which is crazy to me, because if you look at some of the biggest filmmakers in Hollywood today, from Antoine Fuqua to Spike Jonze, Francis Lawrence, Michael Bay, David Fincher, all of them come from music video. And if you look at their work closely, you can tell that they understand story, first act, second act, third act. They understand how to build. They understand character development. And that's the beauty in our work, man. The beauty in our work is to find new talent and to break them. But unfortunately, we have this gated community of an industry that doesn't let us in. And I understand, like, there's risk factor that comes into play. There's a comfort level that comes into play, because a lot of these companies, agencies and production companies, they've been working together for 10, 15 years. So they got their formula. Why break it? But in order to have true representation that looks like myself and X, and Black women, and Indigenous, and people of color as a whole, we have to bring representation on all levels. That's the creative level, that's the executive level, that's the output of work that goes out that reflects all Canadians. Remember, like when we were growing up, watching I Am Canadian commercials were literally all white. The only thing that was Black in the I Am Canadian commercials was the puck that they were playing hockey with, okay? So it's a problem. If we truly represent multiculturalism, it needs to reflect in the storytelling, it needs to reflect in the boardrooms, and it needs to reflect in our industry as a whole. It's the only way we're gonna make true change.
Ira, I wanted to talk to you because Taj makes and X make a lot of really good points, and they laid it right out there. Now you're having discussions with clients. Tell us a little bit about that, and how
Okay.
how that plays into the current environment.
Okay, thanks, Leah. I'd like to say, first of all, that everything we're talking about has been happening for a very, very long time. Recent events have given us now a platform to talk about it. And it's not new. So I really want to stress, it's like, oh, it just happened. This just happened, so let's talk about it. So one of the things on the client side and agency side that was well-meaning, but is part of the systemic issue we deal with, is this famous line, I don't see color. I don't see color. So why do I even remotely have to represent something that I don't see? Well, that's not the point. We are Black, we are seen, so see us. So when they say they don't see color, it is a way of dismissing a whole section of the population by this innocence. And I think X said it best. There is something I want to point out, Canadian versus American. One of my experience with the Canadian conversation is when I was younger, and by the way, 34 years, because I started in advertising when I was 5. So please note that. I was 5 years old when I started. So one of the things I used to think about what was happening, it was so subtle. It was so, as X said, well, you're not quite right for this. And so you'd question yourself, like, is this what it seems? Then when I was in an agency that had a lot of American clients, man, they were in your face about it. There was no gray area how they felt and what they were thinking. So at least you could have the conversation. So there's that part of it. And then I feel that some of the clients, they just don't want to rock the boat. They want someone to be the first. So first of all, they have to see us and acknowledge we're just equal. We're people. We represent part of your population. We want people to look at a TV and just, they're included in it. It's inclusion and equality in all of our advertising. So you mean to tell me that, people of color don't drink beer? Oh, well, then you haven't been to many parties that I've been to. So we all have those same things. So why aren't we asked to do that? And so I found when I first started my career, there was that. And then there was a lack of understanding of why it was important, why we should. And I think what's challenging is that we even have to have that conversation, which sounds like we're justifying a reason to be. And what we've always wanted to do is all things remaining equal talent or better, equal opportunity or better. I never understood the compelling reason why it wasn't there. I also want to talk about seeing people of color doing what you might aspire to do. I talk about the best examples really are music and athletics. For everyone, they can see people of color, they identify at that level. What we have to do is the people in it, and what Taj and X are doing is they're planting those seeds, and it's like getting it in their minds that you can be this, you can do this, because the people who are successful in doing it, we have this, it's an added responsibility and an honor to go back into society from the time kids are in high school and what do I want to be when I grow up? Yeah, I want to be a baller because I get it, or I want to be a musician. But why can't I be a Black executive? Why can't I be that? And it's been 34 years, and I'd say in 34 years, I would still be pressed to see not only a person of color at the executive table, but a woman who is a person of color at the executive table. So one of the things we try to do is get into these programs. This is what it looks like. This is a success. Think about it. And I said to Leah yesterday, and I'm going to be very candid about this. When I see a candidate and I'm introduced or I know, and it is a person of color, I absolutely, without a doubt, go out of my way to open that door for that person, because their mistakes are bigger. People do see different things. And yeah, do I do it? Absolutely, I do it. But again, the caveat is based on skill, same level. I'm not going to bring someone, I wouldn't hire a brain surgeon. It's like, well, I worked at the Piggly Wiggly. No, if you have the credentials, you are equal. And yes, I feel a responsibility to bring them in. So I think there's a number of things that go into it, but now it's the powder keg that has been simmering for, I can't, hundreds, a long time, is now open. And now the discussions are happening. I find the clients are very nervous to have the conversation because they don't want to offend. And so since what has happened in the States that blew up and should have, I have clients who is like, I don't know how to ask you, but can I ask you? Listen, it's a start and I will take it. And if they want to be part of the solution, the big thing is they have to do something. They don't have to talk about it. They now have to reflect it when we're casting, when we're talking about, when we're doing storyboards. Who is that talent? Like, it's going to have to be a conscious effort.
Yeah. And in that panel that we had in October, there were some stories of the producers wanting to engage Black talent in front of the camera. And those conversations were not allowed to happen. They were not well received. So I think totally to your point, Ira, and X as well, that you have to lay that groundwork. You've got to show your people that they can have those conversations with the client. It's got to start somewhere. But if we're going to quieten them, you're not going to see any movement in front of the camera, and especially not behind the camera. It all starts with, as you say, Ira, representation to show, beyond just sports and those stereotypical stories that are out there. So one last question on this, Ira, just wondering, when you're having conversations with clients, do they see that there is a need for diversity? So is that specific, what their definition of diversity is, what their definition of representation is? Are you having those kinds of conversations with them?
The kind of conversations I'm having is, they're more around what they believe to be true. That they believe that people of color are not held back in any shape, form, or way because we're this giant mosaic and we have open borders. And it's like, as I said in our prep, it's a little kumbaya, right? It's a little like everything is beautiful in its own way. But they've got to go deeper than that. And it's all, like, this whole movement is like, then what are we doing about it? If that is true, if it is true that there are no barriers and people aren't being held back or we're not considering it, then why isn't it reflected in the work? So that is the big question, right? It's not about, they don't feel that it's as deep as it is. They also really draw a line between Canada and the US. And it's almost, it's a defensive move in sense, like, we're not that bad. It's not that bad. And as a person of color, nothing can get me all bajiggity by someone telling me it's not that bad when they don't know what it is. So it's education, having the conversation, and then literally challenging them, what could you do to change that? And that's when it gets into, well, you know, and it's no excuses. Someone's got to be brave enough, and courageousness plays into this to show. We're not saying disproportionate. We're not saying anything. Same opportunity. Let's be able to do that. And I think that there's inclusion of, you know, of people for sure, but I think, have people been excluded for whatever reason because of the color of their skin? That's the question.
I want to take this discussion to something that all three of you have mentioned, you know, that the content needs to reflect the world around us. What is happening also is that there is something called a tick box mentality. There is this need for diversity that everyone talks about. However, a lot of mainstream content has diverse characters that gets relegated into these stereotypes for side characters, a maid, a friend, or something else. It's tokenism that happens. It's not normalized yet. I want to ask Taj and X, I want to ask you first, what is normalizing according to you? And how can content creators weave this into their storytelling without resorting to tokenism? What can they do to make it reflect this world?
I mean, look at the world around you, especially Toronto, when we really get a mix. You know, your nerdy black friend who discusses Star Wars and Star Trek. The lineup. When I try and explain to people Toronto's diversity, I say, look at the lineup at a West Indian restaurant, right? That lineup is not a bunch of people that identify with black culture. The fire truck, literally, there's one beside my apartment downtown. A fire truck pulls up. All the firemen jump out. They're all white. Cops pull up. Black people, white people, everyone gets West Indian food. Everyone understands a bit of each other's culture. We all, for the most part, grew up in rather diverse schools. So there is no special formula. Look around, you know? And touching back on what Ira was saying, it's not just a matter of diversifying because it's the right thing to do. You're missing your wins. You're missing your awards. You look past Kareen Evans because she's some young light-skinned girl. All right, she goes to America. She's literally winning gold awards at the, you know, I got looked over. We go elsewhere and start winning. Literally that same talent pool that birthed Drake and The Weeknd and all these other kids that are ripping up the music scene. They all have people. They have a whole world of young creative friends, all people of color that were ready to go. They were right there for everyone to grab onto, and they didn't. So where's the noise coming out of our industry? From the music, because that's the most mixed, right? And then you get in there, they're actually, when you get amongst those people, they're actually representations of our city. You know, there's an Italian, and then there's a Lebanese guy, and then this one's from East Africa, and that one's from the West Indies, and it's everybody is what makes this engine run. And then you get into these boardrooms, you get into these writers' rooms, you get into all these places, and it looks nothing like that, and nothing like that at all, right? And it's like I said, we're not just failing on the look. We're failing on the points. We're not getting points on the board because we've been too closed to color, right? And yeah, so that we need that across the board. We need that mix of, it's not just about what's going on in front of the camera. It's what's behind. I mean, look, Taj and I did a project with Samsung, and we got heat because there's, you know, we took 3 of our directors. They couldn't afford the kids of color, so they got 3 white directors. So they're on the, what's with these white kids? But meanwhile, behind the camera is, you know, Taj and I, and the producer's Asian, and behind the camera was actually the diversity. And we forgot that thing for what it looks like, right? So it's not always a case of every show needs a black person, and now we got a black person on camera, so then we need a black person behind the camera. No, like, I think it's much more important that we have representation in these rooms off camera than what's going on in front of camera. What's going on in front of camera needs to ring true to real life. What's going on in those boardrooms needs to reflect our fuller society.
And to add on to your point, X, like, look what happened with that disaster with the Pepsi campaign, right? Like, that's one of the biggest misfires in a long time. You know, Dove campaign, of course, from the changing from, you know, black to white. Like, if there was representation in those rooms, that would never have gone down. You know, I've been in situations where, you know, there's conversations that's being had. And to your point, I know there's that fine line of being tokenized, but at the end of the day, it's about what is authentic and what is right and what is wrong and what speaks to the culture today, right? Like, growing up, when I watched television, I watched everything. I watched Asian Horizons on Channel 4. Then I watched Hong Kong cinema, Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Yang Bao. I watched, you know, Scorsese films, George Lucas, Spike Lee. Like, I love stories, and I learned all about different cultures and customs. You know, just recently I watched this amazing Jewish limited series called Unorthodox, you know, on Netflix.
Good.
And that's what it's all about. It's about creating stories that speak to the culture. And when you have the right representation in these rooms, not just in front of the camera, behind the camera, you're making sure the dialect is right, the culture is embedded right. You know, everything has to be pure. Like, if you listen to the director, like, for instance, the director who directed Ray, there was this documentary called When They See Us on Netflix. You know, he was a white director who told Ray, who was like, you know, a black rhythm and blues artist, but he knew it was important to bring in a black writer and to sit with his folks and go to where he's at, understand the culture, understand the customs, understand the music, so there's not a misfire that what happened with the Nina Simone movie when they did colorism, you know, or when you make a movie called Gods of Egypt and they're all white men. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. And it's crazy that in 2020 that we're still having these conversations, because to Ira's point, like, this has been happening for a long time. Even movies like, you know, when you watch, like, you know, there's a Jamaican, hey man, what's going on, man? And like, they're from Trinidad. Like, what? Like, so it's like culture has always been misrepresented. And again, the only way you're gonna change that is systemically, brands, agencies, and production companies. Because when you have diversity, and that's one thing we pride ourselves with Pop Rock, doesn't matter, it's in front of the camera, behind the camera. We represent everybody. And I'm talking everyone. Like, when we shot Drake's Nice for What with Karina Evans, Karina said, Taj, because we're shooting all these beautiful women, we're shooting black, you know, Latino, white, we want to represent all different shades of women, different voices of women. So she wanted to make sure her whole cast was women. Our you know, producer, our art director, down to the IT, like, everything was all females, and it was awesome. X was there, he was on there, he experienced the magic. Because at the end of the day, we have to be allies to each other. If we're supposed to be a community and an industry, right? No different than sports. Look what the Raptors did. That's like a snapshot of what we're talking about. The Raptors brought the whole city together. It brought this amazing patriotic energy to our city, where everyone felt proud of being Canadian. Once upon a time, that wasn't there. Remember, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from New York City, man. Yeah, I'm just visiting Toronto during Caravana. We all know the bullshit, right? But during that playoff season, that championship season, black, brown, white, black, it didn't matter who you were. Everybody was unified. It was a beautiful thing. And that's what I want to see in our creative industry. That's what I want to see in our stories. I'm tired of seeing the same shit on CBC over and over and over. I'm tired of seeing Anna Green Gables, man. Like, we need to switch this up. You know what I mean? I want to learn more brown stories. I want to learn more Asian stories. I want to learn more black stories. You know, and that's what it's about, man. Like, we have to make a true reflection of the culture, because guess what? If I'm blessed that I have 2 black sons, 11 and 7. They're blessed. Like, they have movies now. They could see Selma with Martin Luther King. I took them to go see Black Panther. You know how proud I felt watching I know we're going to get to the superhero thing. I'm jumping steps. Sorry, Leah. But it was such a proud moment as a father for them to see heroes that look like them and they're futuristic and they're intelligent and tech savvy. It was like, wow. And my son was born in the era of a Black president. So like already having that sense of confidence and that sense of belonging, they felt like they were a part of something. Because when we came up, my heroes were blonde hair, blue eyes. And you know what I mean? And the women I saw who were Black, they were hookers. And the Black men that I saw were pimp dealers and drug dealers and were murderers. No doctors, no superheroes, no, none of that. No levels of excellence, Black excellence. And to me, art reflects culture. Culture reflects art. So what do you think that's doing to these young kids, right? Which is a whole other conversation, what's happening on the streets right now. Because a lot of these kids don't feel they belong here. They feel displaced. So we have a responsibility as storytellers to tell stories that people can identify with. Man, I could be an executive. I could be Tyler Perry and have my own film studio. That's incredible. I could be Ira. I could have a seat at the table instead of being the help or being security, or I could be like Director X and using my platform and to use it for the good. That's what it is. We got to be leaders of example, but we also have to be leaders of industry. And if we're leaders of industry, then we have to lead the right way. And we have to change this way.
I think, sorry, I was going to say, I think that's amazing. And I think a really important point that both X and Taj brought up, there is race and there is culture. And what we're looking at is the culture that informs this, that makes it authentic, that makes it real. And to Taj's point, when you miss the point, like you miss the point, and it does more damage. You have to understand the culture. I mean, Denzel said it well yesterday. He was on some panel and he goes, there's a reason that when Steven Spielberg did Schindler's List, that he brought something to it because he understood the cultural impact of that. Whereas, when you do that in movies, in any content, you have to bring what it means to the people so that they can identify and feel part of it, which is that alienation piece. You got to feel part of it. Like, I'll ignore stuff because they're not talking to me. Right. So from a business point of view, to X's point, they're in business. So if they're in business, they want to be able to relate to as many people as they can. By the omission of people of color in the creation or the execution, it's a missed opportunity. And the missed opportunity starts long before the finished product is on the screen.
I want to ask this question to you, Ira, based on what Dad said. One sentence that he said really struck, which is we have a responsibility to tell the stories that people can identify with. That's a very loaded statement. And when it's we, it's not just all of us, but it's clients, it's brands, it's agencies that have that responsibility, and they have that power too. Do they realize they have that power and responsibility? Do they realize, or do they understand what normalizing versus tokenism versus just having one small bit means?
So again, I'll use the example I said yesterday. If you're at Harvard and I'm in a class as a person of color with other people who are not of color or white or whatever, the table stakes are I am as smart as you are because this is where I am. So let's take that away. So most people of color in a position of power, intellectual, creative, what have you, they actually know. We spend a lot of time navigating how and when we do that, because make no mistake, some people get very uncomfortable with the conversation because that means they have to acknowledge that something's going on that isn't so great. So I know that I have had conversations in my professional career. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, you don't go there. And why don't I want it? Because it's uncomfortable for me, and people don't like to be uncomfortable. The reason that I can have this soapbox, as you say, is I have the confidence now in my ability, my tenure, the table I sit at to be able to do it. So you have to start that way. And it also, like her or not like her, I grew up with the big Oprah. I remember being young and turning on the TV and going, what? She's what? I could be her. And she wasn't little. She wasn't gorgeous. She was just not like, and as much as it is, she changed my life because it was the first time outside of movies and whatnot that I understood that you could be powerful and you didn't have to adapt yourself to be a size 6 and kind of straight, because as women we're curvier and we're different, and she didn't cave, and she was told, well, you're actually a little too black looking for us, so do this and this. And somewhere in there, someone saw that opportunity, and she was very true to that cause for going forward. And she has always used that pulpit. So now you see that. And I think it extends beyond her now. And it's sharing that information for everybody on the call. There are so many things on TV and HBO. We're all trapped like little doggies in our homes. So take advantage. If you watch The Shop on HBO, Maverick Carter is LeBron James' business partner. They get in athletes, actors, politicians. Yes, there's an emphasis on people of color that are incredibly smart. And if we can expose people to see it, seeing, as they say, is believing, as we put right in the title. If you don't see it, you don't know what's out there. You don't know you can aspire to it. So yes, we have a responsibility, and I feel anyone who has been fortunate and smart enough and determined enough to make a mark and make it, they know that, and they spend a lot of time trying to pay it forward in some sense, shape, or way.
So what I loved about what Taj was talking about was this idea of being purposeful. And I think that that's really missing in a lot of, we've said that agencies have power, that clients have power, but that purpose and that being purposeful is definitely missing. Again, I'm going to go back to that Idea Lounge and the panelists that we had on there. What was interesting was access came up multiple times. It's a huge issue. They said that they hounded people. They knew this was the industry they wanted to be in, but they hounded, they lied, they begged, they scrounged for opportunities. And most importantly, they said for them, there was no clear path. And so their path into the industry is not replicable. And so it's of limited value to people if I can't see how I can do that. And X, again, you had interned for Hype Williams. It was a huge opportunity. From what I understand, you didn't have a ton of experience on production. Still, that was the beginning of your learning. But can you talk to us about that opportunity, how you got it? And then let's start talking about how we clear that path and make that path replicable for people to get into the industry.
I mean, when people say, how did I get with Hype? I tell them persistence. It took a long thing. There's something about, especially on the film side of things, how you get in. There's no one has the same story, because how you get in is very, very difficult. And then there's even part of that where how you get in shows me that you should be in. You know what I mean? If all things being equal, if the doors were open, the issue is that we have some kids that figure out how to get there and then the door won't open. Okay? But it's just everything's different. There's Hype Williams in the late 90s, a production company in Tribeca. That's when Def Jam had their own office and Bad Boy it was just a very different thing. Like, you would go to Justin's in New York and it'd be Jay-Z, and like they were there. They weren't billionaires yet. Warren Buffett wasn't calling anybody. They didn't have political connections. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't that scene that it is now. So there's no way to kind of replicate what that was. But it's it's a real question. On the advertising side, look, you can go to school. I think there's a part of it where kids don't even know that's an option. They're creative, and no one's explained to them, hey, there's people that make those commercials, or there's people who make those radio ads, or make those billboards. So there's a part of it, education for young people to see that that's a possibility in life. Then on the film side, I think we need to be more aware about giving people a shot, and opening those doors, and letting people in. Because look, I get hit up a lot. I get hit up a lot in my DMs, and some kid is like, hey, X, call me. I want to be a director. I mean, that shows me a lot about your skill set to get into the game. If that's one DM, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I get wary about saying, if that was me, I would have been DMing you every week. I would have been sending you videos. I would have found other ways. But you remember in school when we did the eggs, when we had to incubate some eggs and and the little chick hatched, and they said, if you help one of these chicks out, you're going to kill it. If it was capable of making it, has to get out on its own strength. So if it was capable of getting out on its own, but you helped it out, you've killed it because it didn't gain the muscle that it needed, right? And if it couldn't make it out on its own and you helped it, it's going to die anyways. So you just got to let them. So there's this weird thing that we got going on in our industry where getting in is, it's your first test up the mountain, like you're Batman trying to get to the secret ninja base. Like, you got to do it. And getting there means, okay, now you're in. So I don't know how we find that balance beyond once the kid shows up at our secret ninja base, we let them in. You know what I'm saying? We give them a shot. I think that's the big message on the production side. Then the advertising side, look, man, we got to message it out. We got to let them know.
Absolutely. So we're holding right now some virtual summer camp sessions for recently graduating students, and we ask them a little poll. And we say, how did you find out about the advertising agency industry? What makes you, who tapped you on the shoulder and told you about us? And the number one answer is, I just always loved ads. Now, on the surface, that sounds fabulous. Oh, you're passionate. You found it. It's such a small path and such a small pathway. No one ever picks. I learned about it in high school. A teacher told me about it, or a guidance counselor told me about it, or I learned through a career, at high school. And that's really the level we've got to connect with them, and make sure that we get in front of them and encourage them and clear that path for them. Taj, any comments on that? You don't have to have any.
No, to X's point, we do get a lot of interns, and the start of this conversation, I brought up the whole situation with Karina. Now, of course, this is the time when X just shot Drake's Hotline Bling, so our phones were, no pun intended, they were just going off the hook, because all these young creatives are like, wow, this is great, one of the biggest iconic videos of the last decade, I need a part of that. And the fact that here it is, these are people from our city doing this on an international platform. I need to be a part of that energy. So we did as much as we could. Like, at the time, we brought in this is our former production company, Creative Soul. We brought in like a slew of interns, and then I even brokered a deal with another production company. They're called Mad Ruck. That they're like a, more of a boutique version of us, but they do like a lot of cool, music videos and stuff. And I'm really close to their manager, who now happens to be Jesse Reyes's manager now. We brought them in too. We brought them into the fold. So like, we wanted to empower, not only the fact that we empowered young creatives, but I also empowered a young executive as well too, because mentorship it's all about mentorship. My mother was taught me, if you're giving blessings, you got to give blessings back, because that's just the pay it forward rule. And if you're spiritual, like, if you can't just be give me. And unfortunately, we work in an industry with a lot of give me. But if you understand the universe and how the world works, if you give back, and that's like information and opportunity, there's been people who sent reels that we don't love, but I give them advice and critiques on like, okay, do this, try that, go back again, work on this, work on that. It's giving them something to work from. We're not shutting down their dreams, but we're giving them inspiration and we're giving them direction. Because like I said, like when X and I came into this game in our like 19s, 20s, like we didn't have that. We didn't have anyone guiding us. We had to go south of the border to get that love. So again, we have to create, you know, if it's initiatives, if it's our industry creating some type of reach out initiatives to like high schools or universities, you know, ramping up the, you know, diverse initiatives for internships, and, you know, testing them out, because sometimes internships are great and sometimes they're disastrous. But, you know, like sometimes you'll find like I said, you'll find a golden gem. And sometimes some people are like, you know what, this is not really for me. Maybe I want to, you know, go back to school and be a doctor, whatever. But at least when you have an internship, it gives you an opportunity to kind of test the waters a little bit. But then, you know, like our executive assistant was an intern and he's a rock star. He's awesome. I'm grooming him right now to be an executive because he gets it. He understands how X and I work, and because we're mental. And to me, it's hard to find real good people. And when you do, you have to cultivate them. You have to continue grooming your talent. I don't think there's enough of that. I feel like we need to groom more. We need to embrace the talent and embrace our industry more. And hats off to my friend Lamar. I'm not sure if you know who Lamar is. He is The Weeknd's creative director. And he started his own platform called XO House, which is kind of like a platform for all creatives. So like, and this is like everything, black, white, people of color, indigenous. He just wanted to create this hub because he wanted to figure out how can I give back to a city that gave me so much love. And now I'm in the place of power and position. So that's what it is for us too. Again, using our position, using our platform to continue going out there and inspiring these youths, because at the end of the day, like, we have to be there for the next generation. What we're doing right now is trying to fix a problem that's been going on way too long. And hopefully this conversation isn't just a conversation. Hopefully this talk isn't just a talk. Hopefully there's going to be action behind this, and there's actually people listening, right? Listening is like, okay, I get it. What can I do? And do it in a way where your intentions are in a good place versus like checking a quota, or like I did my good deed for the day. Like I saw there was a when this whole conversation, when all this shit was going down in the industry and people were being reached out to, you know, people were talking to agencies and there was conversations going around, then there were some like agencies that were saying, hey, you know what? I'll give you 30 minutes of my time. Like, 30 minutes of your time? Like, really? Okay. You know, I'm not going to knock anybody for what they want to do, but it's like, I don't know what you could get out of 30 minutes. You know, like shit, the conversation we're going to have is going to probably be over an hour and a half. Like, if you really want to dig down and really sit with someone and really like, what are you trying to do? Where are you at? Where's your desires? Where's your passions? How can I help you? How can I help you help yourself? You know what I mean? Like, our business is all about working for the work, and understand there's that, to X's point, that whole mentality of working your way to a certain point. And when you get there, you know, like for those people who are really serious about this, that live, breathe, eat, shit this industry, how do we foster that talent? So we could build our own industry like the way the US has done it and the UK has done it, right? But unfortunately, everything that we've done has always been like, okay, let's get this work from out of here and out of there. Like, we have all this great talent in our backyard. We have award-winning copywriters, creatives, directors, executives right here. So why are we going elsewhere? And that's why I pride myself about our production company is like, we build Canadian talent that go on being international stars. And that for me is a bigger pride for me, because I'm truly patriotic when it comes to being Canadian. Again, we weren't always like that, because we were always like, you know, brainwashed, like, oh, American media, we are like second-class citizens. We're not a world-class city. And I thought that was always bullshit. I always thought we were a world-class city. I always thought that we were world-class creatives on all fronts. And it's only now our world is catching up to us. You got Hollywood executives coming to me saying, hey, is there any stories I can talk about Toronto? Because right now they're developing a Rob Ford story at AMC. It's going to be incredible. Well, yeah, there's a lot of great stories in Canada. But us as Canadians don't see ourselves as that, you know? But we don't have great stories out of Vancouver. We don't have great stories out of Nova Scotia. You know, we don't have like, you know, they shoot Fargo and Edmonton, for God's sakes. Like, we have all these incredible things happening here. And I feel like we need to build our own industry. We need to build our own talent. And that means we have to invest more and do more.
I can't agree with you more, Taj. And that is, and I don't want to steal our own thunder, if you can call it that, but we are formulating a mentorship program as well. And I will say, so I've been working with very closely with a doctor on crafting this. And I think, to your point, number one, 30 minutes is not enough. It's you know, thankful to the folks that have reached out and want to start that conversation. I think that's great. But there needs to be an understanding before you mentor someone who is Black, who is Indigenous, or another person of color, of what that means and that culture, but also what racism is and what systemic racism is and how it manifests itself in different situations. Because if you are going to truly help someone and pave that path to the C-suite and the executive, which is what we want to see, we want to see that infiltration of storytelling throughout all levels of advertising in order to get truly representative content. There needs to be an understanding of what people deal with every day. So not only how a mentor can be an ally, but how they can help mentees get the most out of that relationship and move forward. So thank you so much for pointing that out. I would like to just make sure that we talk about, we've kind of touched on it in a couple of different ways, but that difference between representation and storytelling. Anyone can jump in, but tell us and tell the folks in the audience what that means to you.
I mean, I think a big part of that is that there's someone in the room. There's this, you know, I mean, you know, I relate across all the different parts of filmmaking. So writer's room comes to mind, but that there's people shaping the story, or that you're listening to people. You know, when I was making Superfly, it was an Asian writer, and my executive producer is an old Jewish guy, and the writer put in the Black character gets a haircut in the club, and I'm trying to explain to these guys, this is not, you can't put this in the movie. You can't have this. You can't put this in the movie, and it was a big argument. And eventually, you know, I got to the note behind the note. And you know, he was getting his nails done in the club. You need to be doing something, you know, boisterous to show that he's a bad guy. But it's these kinds of things, man. You need someone there. You need someone there to catch these things. I did a guest appearance on America's Next Top Model, and it was the model challenge, and all the models had to do like a scene, and I'm going to direct the scene. And they're like, okay, so in this scene, there are these two Black models with no shirts on. It goes, okay, so we're going to have this collar, and you're going to have these chains, and then you're going to walk these two. I'm like, no, let me time out. You're not going to walk these Black men on chains. It's not happening. Like, but people are so caught in the whatever they're in, right? And look, it's not, there is a part of that. They don't see color. They just kind of see, wouldn't this be a great story? Or wouldn't this be a great visual? And then they're not looking at the larger context and how ugly that can all get, right? I think it might have been a Canadian agency that did was it 23andMe, the one where the white slave master and the Black slave are going to run off to be in love together. Was that, but have you all seen this? It's, you know, they're sneaking around corners in the days of slavery, and we can finally be together. And they just don't, I get it, because that's an actual story in Canadian history about, you know, it's there, but you need context, and you need someone in the room say, yeah, I get that's a story, and I get what you're trying to do, but you're not doing it. And there's got to be someone to call these things out across the board, right? That's like Taj said, the Pepsi commercial. There's a level of that representation in the room to call out those mistakes. And then just a general, like, your sense of humor should always be intact. I mean, there's some general, like, does anyone remember Ass Effects? No? Ass Effects was an like, it was a, if you have, acid reflux, and they named it Ass Effects, and it was went all the way to CNN. We all can appreciate how the many layers of people it took for a commercial to say, I need Ass Effects. When I use my Ass Effects, and then people started making, no one caught, no one caught the foolishness. So, I mean, there's a level of playfulness that we should still always have, like, I don't know about that. And then there's a little bit of cultural sensitivity that you get with diversity in the room, people being able to point things out. I mean, look, a lot of the examples that we got right now are is the big mistakes, right? That is one of those DNA test things with the slavery thing, and Pepsi was just crazy just to think that protests were the right time to go and do like hey, people are protesting, let's do a Pepsi commercial, but they just didn't see it. Again, man, you need people in the room. There's just no other way. There's no other way to say it. It's not just about being in front of the camera. People have gotten that, right? I'm actually very impressed because I'm a mixed race guy. You talk about not seeing yourself. I never saw the television growing up was light-skinned black girls and dark-skinned black men. The me's were never there, right? And especially in the representation of parents. And now you see that all the time. So we get it that what's going on to what we're going to show the world needs to mirror the world a bit. Keep on coming back to it. We need that behind the camera. In fact, I think it's way more important that we're getting that behind the camera, and all the different spaces.
And I think to your point, X, those folks that are representing behind the camera and kind of in the room, they also need to be empowered and feel safe so that they can say when something does not ring true.
Yeah, I mean, look, we Taj and I have a good friend of ours. He's at a big old agency in the States, and he would say, "Yo, man," he had his own little mental quota for how many black people he would put up for jobs, because that's an American thing. Being too much the black guy for black people in the office was not. He didn't feel safe doing that, right? Maybe now things are changing. Now that people are realizing that there's a real discussion to be had. But you're right. There's you do get a lot of that sometimes, where you're the one, it's almost unspoken. I'm the one black person here. Let me play this game.
Well, even Ira, you've mentioned that as well. And you're like, I can't be the bastion and the beacon for every single thing. I can't be the Wikipedia page for everybody.
I became the Wikipedia for black people. And I say it half jokingly, but there's the two parts of it. There are those who want to know. They really do have a desire to want to know. And, history helps us a lot with that. But I think it goes back to what X and Taj are saying. The cultural thermometer becomes a person of color who lives it. Now, you could be a person of color and just be sensitive to the differences, because we stumble when there's this assumption that everything is the same, that what works for the masses will work for black people. And, and it's a historical thing, the definition of success, all the things you've read online, in Twitter, every article that's been written, that, I've had friends say, is that offensive? When it's like, well, you're not like that, because all of a sudden where we zig instead of zag is the standard is what is white. And to be able to call that out, well, that's not a standard. And it is kind of that unconscious thing that that you're trying to move away from, as making something that is not you the definition of you, whether that be success, whether that be where you fall in your career, how you come in, because you don't look at it. Taj, I'll look at you. You have dreads. They're beautiful, by the way. But there was a time, it's like, what's with the hair? Like, can't you have a nice little hairdo? Get your hair did? I'm a black woman who relaxed my hair one time, and I'm like, what the hell? This is way too much work. Shave it off. Super easy. Maybe it was because I was lazy, but I never conformed. Whereas I have 3 sisters who did. And I'm like, seriously? But those are the things, right? Because they grew up when it was just a bit more accepted. So it's the opportunity to be who you are and then express the cultural differences of who you are instead of just trying to reflect somebody else's. It's a very key thing for me.
And I want to jump in. There's a little bit of what we do. We don't always think of the higher level that what we're doing in advertising and entertainment, where we're actually pointing society to where we're going. Because when I have these discussions about, you know, the whiteys and all these kind of stuff, like the lack of color in the industry, I also point out these are our allies. We're very liberal business, right? So there is something in what we're putting on screen, and we all understand that seeing yourself on screen means something to us. Right or wrong, it just does. And that doing it right actually begins to push society in the right direction, right? And finding the right balance between, we don't want to be preaching to people where they can feel it, but just making that reality on screen be a nicer reality. What we do, it's reality, just a little nicer, just nice enough that it's aspirational, but not so nice that we feel like, come on, really, right? And get that little sweet spot going. That's what that's really the as much as we're selling products and we're making these breaks in between our TV shows, that's actually the higher purpose. That's actually the thing in what we're doing that serves the larger society. Look where we're going. Look where we can be. Look at these friendships that are possible, right? And when we get it right, man, it's the medicine in the dog food. The audience doesn't know they've eaten it, but they have. And there's just a little something begins to change. There is a higher thing for us to reach and go for.
Speaking of getting it right, speaking of change, there's been a lot of conversation, especially in light of recent events, on what can we do to change. And there have been pledges, there have been open letters, there have been these written commitments floating around. But they have been just that. They have been written commitments. There is still a question of how can we do this? How can we push and help people get resources to get in the room? How can we promote the talent? Leah mentioned the high school aspect, right? That's one door. Someone in the comments just mentioned about, should we have a database of POC talent and Black talent, and would that help? I wanted to ask you, what is your thoughts on this? How can we make these written commitments become more substantive? How can they be more measurable and bring the transparency and show the changes to people?
Well, from my point of view, from advertising, directories and whatnot, absolutely. When we talked earlier, we need to do steps before we even get there. And that one of those steps is the conversation. I keep talking about that conversation. Well, what is it? Are you doing it or are you not? Look at it. Look at your products, look at what you're producing, look who's working on it. That's the first thing. And that becomes uncomfortable when you're not. It's like, holy crap, I'm not at all. Like, I'm not even close to having any diversity or representation, number one. And then it's almost like a commitment to consider, to look and do with the addition of those resources, directories, and where to find the people that you're looking with the talent pool that we have. You look at someone like Taj, like just having that, this is this group, they're available, because we have to help them. Like it's naive to think they're going to go, well, we really, and it's like, this is a broad statement. There are people that have made inroads for sure, but it might be because those products have a strong pull to people of color, so they look after it. So as the executive in a room and as an advertising, I'm putting on my business lens, right? How is this going to help my business by doing it? It's going to give you more reach. It's going to give you more of this. It's going to make you more relatable. It's going to be to the younger generation. Jesus, they got a clue. They're woke. They're whatever you want to call it. There are so, like, it's a checklist of being aware and doing this will give me what? Because if there's no upside, sweet Jesus, ain't gonna happen. Like, let's just call a spade, it ain't happening. So when you do that and you break that down, and there's a lot of smart people who do that every day, and Taj and X have talked about the impact that Canadian talent can have. You want to be part of that. You don't want to be the second to the party. You want to be, I would want to be with that young director when she started, because you get a whole bunch of bragging rights, because people know they like to brag. So it's like, I was on that train a long time ago. So why don't you be part of that as well? Don't wait until they're successful in what's doing. So that's what I mean by the order. You can be part of their success by opening that door and giving those opportunities and letting them flourish in these environments. And what we tend to do, because Canadians, and I'm sometimes, we play it safe, so we wait. And now, okay, X, like, so I got a Dove commercial. What are you doing? Well, sorry, like he's gotten to the top of his game. The phone's ringing all the time. But imagine, like anything, you've built a relationship where it's like, we remember those who help us get to where we're going to go, and they'll help your business. So they'll have a value. So that's my 2 cents.
I mean, jumping in, I think we got to experiment. We got to try. We're doing something that's a little different. Again, we have an industry, again, on the production side, where you just kind of find your way in, and that's how you get in. How you get in. On the advertising side, there's a lot of kids who don't know. So I don't know. Thinking on my side, how I could begin to have some of these kids who have interest in filmmaking opening up their eyes to something beyond music videos. That's a lot of what I get my way, because that's what they've seen. Again, like they like filmmaking, they like photography, then they see someone like me making music videos or making a movie, and they're like, okay, that's what it is. There's not a lot of commercial stuff that speaks to them. I think we all got to try what comes to mind. We're in a brand new space, and we're trying to bring a whole new set of talent into the industry, right? And to be realistic, I think a big starting point is in the subcultures, in the team surrounding music artists. You know, a lot of these kids, like I'm saying, they think their options is to be something to do with the music industry, a creative director, a director, somehow a stylist. Somehow they think their creative options are music industry, and that's really it. I don't even run into a lot of kids that say they weren't trying to make movies, because that seems so far out of reach to them. So there's a lot of education about getting the word into the general public about writing, copywriting, advertising, the creative industries in general, and that they're real, actual jobs.
Jumping in here, in terms of a solution, I love the idea that Ira mentioned in terms of creating a directories database, because that's always helpful for people looking. It's like, well, it's right here. There's a database. Go through it. Check it out. For me, what I like to do is, because I work with a lot of young creatives, they kind of point me in the direction as far as I'm like, okay, what's the hot shit right now? Who's got their finger on the pulse? Show me the hottest new video, or the hottest new photographer, or the hottest new short film, or I'll pay attention. I talk to my friends in Hollywood, like, who is like the new filmmakers that are putting in some cool films at Sundance, or I'll talk to Cameron Bailey. Who are some kids that you have in your program over at in your lab, your TIFF lab? So at the end of the day, like, remember, our jobs working in marketing is understanding who your target audience is and going after it. That's our jobs. That's what we do all the time. So why can't we apply that same technique when it comes to finding talent? It's the same thing. You got to know one, where you're looking, two, what you're looking for. And for me, my appetite is just culture. I don't care if you're a Black woman. I don't care if you're Indigenous. I don't care if you're non-binary. I don't care if you're queer. I don't care whatever you're into. I just want great art. And I'm blessed to be in a position where I'm around young, cool creatives that will point me around and be like, check this out. Because a lot of times, like, if you guys are on phones with me, X will tell you all the time, I'll send like my core team, like, hey, check out this new trailer for this new Wes Anderson movie, or check out this new song, or check out this new book. Like, I'm always about sharing information. And I feel like it's the same thing that we got to do. We live in the information age, okay? we have this thing called Instagram, where back in the days, we would have to get people's lookbooks and portfolios, like these big hard copies, and send these pile of books coming in, like beauty books. Now, all I got to do is like go online and look at who the hot new art directors are, the hot new writers are. It's right in our fingertips, right? It's just like information. Back in the days, you'd have to go to the library and learn about your history by like going through a thing called an encyclopedia, right? Now everything is at our fingertips. So we are more advanced now. And I feel like we just need to do more work. We need to do more digging. And funny enough, look, I'm 45 years of age. I hate social media, but I respect it. I respect the power of the medium, right? Because sometimes when you go in there, I think you get lost into this matrix, like, woo, this is a little bit too much. You could get like, wait a minute, a whole hour went by. Where did I go? Because there's so much information feeding you. So you got to do, it's like anything. You got to do it in doses, right? You can't just sit there and eat a cake one sitting. You got to take your time. You got to have you got to do it in sittings. So it's the same thing with information, you know, and that's why I also pride myself in, you know, again, having a young executive assistant who like is really cool and, you know, he's tapped into the art community. So he's always pointing me around. And then I'll just put a call out there. I'll call my friends. Yo, hey, Lamar from XL. What do you think? Hey, yo, Future from Drake's camp. Yo, who what's hot right now? So I kind of go around and poking around and then do my own research. And I feel like that's kind of how you start, you know, figuring out what's the next thing. Because for me, that's the excitement. To me, it's always about trying to find the next thing. Again, I understand in our business, people, you know, we're all at the stage now. We got mortgages, we got kids in school, you know, like why risk? Why take the risk? But guess what? If you don't take the risk and build the future of our business, what's going to happen? You become stagnant and then you fall the fuck off and you get stale. And you now are not part of the conversation. Because I can tell you right now, I'm 45 and my sons are my A&Rs now. My son's 11. He'll tell me, yo, Dad, check out this artist named The Baby. Yo, check out this anime movie. Check this out. And I'm like, okay. I just shut up and I listen. And he just feeds me and feeds me and feeds me. So my target demos, my son, he lets me know who all the hot new artists are, who the hot YouTubers are, the influencers are. So you gotta look at your pockets of friends. You gotta look at your pockets and resources and tap into that. And thank God that I have a multicultural landscape of friends, and I mean everything. So, you know, like my friend Russell Peters, I remember when he was going out there, he had a huge problem. Like, wait a minute, I'm a comedian in a world where it's predominantly black and white. Where do I fit in? You know, and I know at the time he was getting death threats for kind of his jokes. Because like the stuff that he was, like Punjabi and sing, you know, it was a whole thing. Like, but he realized, you know what, there's a market there for me and I'm gonna go for it. And he was bold and he took that risk, even though he was getting death threats. But then he realized, and the people that had death threats for him didn't realize that what he was doing. He was throwing out these jokes and stereotypes to break the stereotypes and to show that we're just as cool as you are. And he would, you know, make fun of the accents, but he's taken away the hate. He's taken away the pain from it. So it's smart shit. It was very genius. So the point of what I'm trying to get at is we got to go out there and reach, man. I feel like there's such rich culture out there, and that's the beauty of what we do, man. We get to travel and we learn. Like working with X, we've shot on sets where there's gang wars in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, to being in Jamaica, to shooting in Prague. You know. And I've learned so much about people. And at first, you know, to Ira's point, when I walk on the set, holy shit, yo, like you're black and you got dreads and you got tattoos, but you speak very well. I'm like, yeah, and I can count too. You know, because everyone has you in a box, you know, like, you know, and to me, it's like, I understand because again, the information that we're putting out, it's stereotypical, right? You know, like, the roles in Hollywood. Why does every Indian man have to be a cab driver? Why does every black person have to be this or that? Like, it's like, come on, man. Like, we're so much advanced in that. There's so much greatness out there. And I just feel like we need to stop being fucking lazy and dig deeper. Because as creatives, it's about pushing the needle further. It's about going the distance. And the reason why I have masters on my wall like Hitchcock to Kubrick, you know, these are masters of what they do. These are guys that didn't just settle. These are guys that went the distance. Spielberg was making movies that just changed my lifestyle. These are two black kids that grew up, studying photography by Herb Ritz and watching films by Orson Welles and Hitchcock. You know what I mean? And and watching Whoopi Goldberg and Jumpin' Jack Flash and being cool and feeling like there's a part of things. And there's so much greatness. And what I'm excited about right now, with all the conversations that are happening, imagine all the stories that's gonna come out of this year. This is a crazy year, man. This year is insane. Like, you want to talk about the perfect storm, from COVID to the quarantine to one of the biggest civil rights movements globally, where all creeds, all races, and all nationalities came together to fight this biggest pandemic called racism. There's so much stories are going to come out of that. And it's our jobs to tell these stories in a way that speaks to the energy, speaks to the emotion, and speaks to what's happening in this world. And we can't cheat them, because those kids are so smart. This isn't back in the days like, who gives a fuck? Just feed them this shit, they'll eat it. No, our audience is so highly intelligent. They understand it, man. That's why they can handle shows like Euphoria and 13 Reasons Why. We don't have to put on mittens anymore. They can have the big conversations. So as teenagers and youth, if they can have uncomfortable conversations, why the fuck can't we? So I understand you're gonna feel uncomfortable. Well, guess what? Yeah, during the Me Too movement, it sucks to hear what women are being subjected to. So yeah, I'm sorry that I'm gonna have an uncomfortable situation about how men use their position of power for sex. That's fucked up. But guess who's more uncomfortable? The victim that's feeling that situation. So let's kill this uncomfortable shit. At the end of the day, we are a community. We're not here to make no one feel bad. We just want to have a conversation. And if we can't have an honest conversation, that's the problem. If we don't see there's a problem with what's happening with equal pay for women of color, black women, that's a problem. If we don't have an issue with fucking Trump, who's all about dividing and his hatred is spreading around the world like a virus, that's a problem. So we have the control and the power to change that narrative, because it's our image, it's our imagery, and it's our storytelling, and it's our scripting that's going to enlighten and change the mindset of the next generation. So again, that's why I keep throwing back to us. It's on us. Our kids are on the front line right now fighting for the future of their rights and the future and the generation after them. So what are we doing? We need to step up. We need to make sure that they know that we got you, we hear you, we're at work. And that's why I love what's happening right now. We're at work.
Absolutely. And we want to end this conversation on action, Taj. Absolutely. And I have some thoughts, and they're not definitive by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that action has to have a success metric. I think we have to demand accountability. To your point, Taj, they have to be purposeful, and they have to be substantive and measurable. I think we need to bring transparency to what we do. We have to show what our changes are. We have to talk about it openly, maybe in our hiring pages and on our websites, and talk about these things. I think the executive has to empower people using clear language and communication. To X's point, those people have to be in the room, but we then have to empower them to be able to speak up. We can't make someone responsible for helping agencies get the storytelling right if they don't feel empowered to speak up when they've gotten it wrong. They are often on the front lines pushing those agendas. So do they feel empowered to push that with clients, to encourage the conversation with clients by, producing, maybe even you need to produce a script and key messaging documents to your people to help them push those agendas. Have you said that we will reach a certain percentage of POC representation in our own ranks? Do we make sure that the vendors that we're dealing with, as we saw, the CPAT roster is very much not in line with StatsCan representation. So do we force that issue? Do we work only with production houses that have rosters that represent the community that we operate And then, as we discussed, doing that really purposeful outreach to high school students. And I don't know that that can be just a one-off agency thing, but doing it as an industry and really showcasing to those folks at high school that are thinking about what's my next step, that the creative industry is for them, and that there's a clear path on how to get there, and that we will mentor them to get into those executive positions and grow up to be Ira, like I'm gonna do. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This was an amazing, insightful, very impactful discussion. We want to keep the discussion going, but we want there to be action. So take away from X and from Taj and from Ira those very authentic messages that they brought to the panel today, and see how you can incorporate them into the content that you create and your teams create every day. Thank you, Taj. Thank you, X. And thank you, Ira, and Haem as well, for my partner today in crime. Thank you all for helping us with this discussion. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.